You think it's harmless, don't you? That quiet hunger you feed late at night. That secret scrawl. That thirst disguised as desire, disguised again as freedom. Lust, the drug that poisons empires one man at a time. The silent architect of weak kings and fallen warriors. The very urge that pretends to crown you with pleasure only to rob you of discipline, purpose, and edge. You don't see the bars because they're made of flesh. But make no mistake, this is enslavement. Soft, addictive, camouflaged. And it's devouring you while you convince yourself that it's just part of being human. Let me tell you the truth, no one dares whisper anymore. Lust is for fools. Fools because they mistake momentary pleasure for real power. Fools because they sacrifice long-term mastery for a short-term chemical hit. History doesn't lie. Caesar, at the height of his power, wasn't done by a battlefield but by his appetite. Cleopatra didn't need an army, just a lure, and he fell. A man who conquered nations couldn't conquer his own craving. What does that say about you? You're not Caesar. You don't command legions. You don't shape the Senate. And still, you bow to an algorithm pumping dopamine into your bloodstream. An image, a fantasy, a flickering ghost on a screen. You call that manhood. Nietzsche once warning, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." And that's exactly what lust does. It commands. Puppeteers. You think you're free, but you're just another addict wearing the mask of liberation. We live in an age that worships sensation, not strength. Comfort, not courage. And lust is the most profitable addiction of them all. Entire industries are built on your inability to master your lower self. The more you click, the more you're chained. No one gets rich off your discipline. They get rich off your leaks. Your leaks in willpower, in focus, in self-control. And every time you indulge, something dies. The warrior in you, the builder, the strategist, the man who once wanted more. Carl Jung understood this well. He spoke of the shadow, the part of us that remains hidden, buried, unclaimed. Lust is often the first layer of that shadow. It whispers to the boy in you, not the man. It says, "Just this once," and then repeats itself until you forget how to say no. But when you confront it, really confront it, not with shame, but with awareness, you begin to reclaim your throne. Think of Musashi, the undefeated samurai who wrote the Book of 5 Rings. A man who understood that self-control is the core of strategy. He avoided women deliberately, not because he hated them, but because he knew what a single distraction could cost. In battle, in focus, in legacy. Now ask yourself, what has your lust cost you? Time, energy, opportunities, confidence. Do you even know anymore? Let's be brutally honest. Every time you give in, you rob your future. You dilute your essence. Your edge dulls. Your hunger fades. Because lust feeds the body while starving the spirit. And here's the part most men never want to hear. Especially in a world that sells sex like candy, the more you indulge, the weaker you become. It's not moral. It's mathematical. You cannot have two masters. And lust is a master that demands everything, but gives nothing in return except a momentary high followed by emptiness. The battlefield has changed. Today it's psychological. The enemy isn't outside. It's in your pocket, on your screen, in your habits. Look around you. The most powerful men you know, politicians, CEOs, generals, aren't just measured by what they build, but by what they resist. Discipline isn't sexy, but it's lethal. Kissinger once said, "Power is the ultimate aphrodisiac." And he was right. But that power doesn't come from chasing bodies. It comes from cultivating mind, resisting impulse, delaying gratification until you own the field. And the field is yours if you're willing to bleed for it. So, I ask again, what are you giving your life to? A woman who doesn't know your name. An algorithm that knows your weaknesses better than your dreams. Or something higher, something permanent. Because real men build. They endure. They fight battles no one sees. And the greatest battle is the one against yourself. You think you're free because you chase what you want. You think lust makes you powerful because it's yours to pursue. You call it liberation, masculinity, or pleasure. But look deeper. Lust is not a weapon. It's a leash. Every time you cave to lust, you're not in control. You're being controlled. And the worst part, you're not even being dominated by another man or a stronger forceps. You're being ruled by your lowest self. A pathetic, animal self. The same base urges that move a dog in heat. Let me ask you this. Why do you think the most disciplined men in history, warriors, emperors, monks, feared lust more than death? Because they understood what you don't. Lust is not just a distraction. It is a drain on will, on direction, on self-possession. Let's talk about Napoleon. The man reshaped Europe. He was ruthless, brilliant, cold when he needed to be. But his one weakness, Josephine, a woman who cheated on him while he was on the battlefield, she made him beg, cry, lose sleep. The Emperor of France, broken by a letter, not a bullet, not a betrayal from a general, a letter from a woman who didn't love him. Lust made him weak. And when a powerful man becomes weak, the vultures move in. Don't laugh at him, because you're no better. You do the same thing every time you double tap on Instagram with one hand in your pants and the other holding your phone. Every time you fall into the loop of OnlyFans subscriptions, DM fantasies, late-night Tinder swiping. You're Napoleon with his crown off, begging to be noticed by someone who barely sees you as a man. But the modern world doesn't just tolerate lust, it worships it. Sex sells. It drives apps, politics, even religions. Not because it's divine, but because it controls you. And a man who's controlled is a man who can't lead. A man who can't protect. A man who can't build empires. They don't need to kill you when they can keep you occupied. That's what lust is now. A weapon of mass sedation. You're not being hunted. You're being lulled to sleep. Let's talk Carl Jung. He believed that the unconscious drives, like lust, are parts of our shadow self. Dark, primal instincts that we pretend aren't there, but that run our lives when we ignore them. He wasn't saying sex is evil. He was saying, if you don't face the beast within you, it will devour you from the inside. You must learn to see your lust, name it, confront it, and own it, or it will own you. Let's look at Caesar. Julius Caesar was a master manipulator, a politician, a man of vision. But even he used lust as a weapon. Not just politically, but psychologically. He didn't just seduce Cleopatra. He aligned with her. Through charm, yes, but also strategy. He understood that controlling desire, in others and in himself, is the key to ruling nations. Compare that to you. You can't even walk through a shopping mall without being mentally pulled apart by flashing thighs, perfume ads, and cleavage. They've got you drooling at fast food and fast women. Your mind, not even yours anymore. What happened to restraint, to silence, to command? You know what discipline really is. It's choosing not to engage with what weakens you, even when it feels good. The samurai knew this. Miyamoto Musashi, undefeated in over 60 duels, lived like a monk. He wrote, "Do not chase pleasure. Pleasure is a source of weakness. Let that hit you." A man who faced death dozens of times said that the real danger was pleasure. Why? Because when you live for pleasure, you forget how to endure. You lose your edge, you become soft. The world doesn't need more soft men. The world feeds off them. And if you think you can balance it, one foot in pleasure, one in power, you're already lost. The devil doesn't come wearing horns anymore. He shows up as a 9 till 10 in a DM with a filter and a link in her bio. Modern lust is digital warfare. It's not about procreation or connection. It's about hooking you, reducing you to a thing that chases, that begs. Even Nietzsche, who rejected moralism, warned us. He said, "Be careful when you gaze into the abyss, for the abyss gazes also into you." Lust is the abyss. It stares back. And if you're not careful, you become it. Empty, shallow, consumed by the very hunger you thought would fulfill you. But here's the twist. The men you think are getting everything. The players, the Casanovas, the alphas sleeping around. They're often the most hollow, because when you conquer a woman through lust, it's not power. It's proof of how far you've fallen. Do you know how many kings fell because of lust? Not war, not famine, not even betrayal, but women. More specifically, their own lack of control around them. Alexander the Great died young. But even he knew to keep his lust in check. He was surrounded by luxury, concubines, wine, and yet he slept with his sword beside him in armor, because he knew pleasure is the enemy of greatness. You keep chasing pleasuring, and you'll never catch purpose. Now let me be blunt. You've been brainwashed by porn, by influencers, by movies, by pop culture telling you that being a man means getting women. But that's not masculinity. That's just biology with a credit card. You want to be powerful. Stop chasing. Start mastering. Lust mastered is charisma. Lust mastered is focus. Lust mastered is presence. The man who can enter a room and not be moved by beauty, that's the man who moves the room. Do you get that? He doesn't need to act out. He is the action. He doesn't need to seduce. He commands attention by what he withholds. Lust makes you predictable. Control makes you dangerous. You think your urges make you real. But no, your self-control makes you rare. And in a world full of addicts pretending to be free, the man who chooses abstinence becomes a god among animals. You want to be that man. Then start with this vow. You will no longer give away your energy for nothing. Because lust is not free. It costs you your time, your clarity, your confidence. And every time you give in, you're selling your throne for a moment of heat. Don't sell your kingdom for a craving. You want to know the secret behind most failures. Lust, not just sexual lust, but lust in all forms. Lust for validation, lust for comfort, lust for escape. It's the same hunger, just wearing a different mask. And it turns kings into clowns every single day. Look around. You think the man who scrolls all day, obsessed with women he'll never meet, is living. No. He's hiding. From purpose. From responsibility. From becoming the thing he was born to be. He drowns in lust so he doesn't have to face the terrifying clarity of duty. Because deep down, he knows. If he stopped chasing pleasure, he'd have no excuse not to rise. And that's what he fears the most, the burden of becoming powerful. But you're not victim. You are the architect of your habits. And if your temple is built on lust, it will collapse. Again and again. That's why lust is the perfect tool for modern control. Because it turns men into addicts who chain themselves. No need for prison bars when desire keeps them weak. Do you know how easy it is to manipulate a man who's ruled by lust? Whisper the right promise, show a little skin, offer a cheap fantasy, hell, do anything. That's why corporations use it. That's why politicians hint at it. That's why religions warn against it. Because it works. It bypasses your mind and goes straight to your animal brain. That's the part Nietzsche warned you about. The primitive force inside that still wants to conquer and consume. But Nietzsche didn't say to kill that force. He said to sublimate it, to transcend it. He called this man the Bermensch, the one who doesn't escape his instincts but masters them. A higher type of man, not ruled by pleasure or pain, not distracted by the world's illusions. A creator of values, a law unto himself. That's what's possible when you stop letting lust direct you. Not just avoiding failure, but stepping into godlike clarity. Because clarity is the true enemy of lust. See it clearly, and it loses its magic. That Instagram model you obsess over, she's marketing her image like a product. That fantasy in your head, it's not love, it's addiction. And addictions are designed to keep you on a leash. When you stop feeding the lust, you start feeding your vision. And that is when men become unstoppable. Do you want to know why most men will never be free? Because freedom requires sacrifice. You must give up the easy highs, the numbing indulgences, the quick hits of pleasure that rot your core. And lust is the king of all fake highs. Now imagine these two men. One walks into a room, scanning for approval, thirsty for beauty, fidgeting in his need to be seen. The other walks in still, calm, unshaken by lust, unmoved by attention. Who do you fear more? Exactly. Because the man who controls his lust controls the room. He can't be baited. He can't be bribed. He can't be broken. That man. He's dangerous. That's Musashi. That's Caesar. That's Jung's individuated man. That's Napoleon before Josephine. You become a weapon when your urges no longer command you. When you can look lust in the eye and smile, not with resistance, but with power. Because now you choose. You don't need it. You've alchemized it. That's the highest game. The men who mastered this, they became legends. And they did it through sublimation. That's a Jungian concept. Sublimation means taking that energy, that raw desire, and channeling it into art, into strategy, into domination. You think geniuses were born that way. No, they burnt it. But instead of scratching every itch chip, they redirected it. That's why Musashi wrote Book of 5 Rings after a life of battle. He turned the war inside him into timeless wisdom. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations in a bloody war tent. He faced lust, rage, boredom, death, and still stayed centered. That's why Nietzsche wrote Ex Homo while descending into madness. He took all that fire and made philosophy. You can do the same. You don't need to become a monk. You don't need to live in a cave. But you need to stop living like prey. Because every time you give in to the text, the like, the image, the hookup, you trade a piece of your future for a second of relief. Do you even realize what that relief is costing you? Do you know how many hours you've lost to meaningless pleasure? What could you have built? Who could you have become? That pain in your gut, the regret, the fog, the self-hate. It's not because you're bad. It's because your soul remembers what you were supposed to be. But you can't become that mang until kill the slave inside you. And lust is slavery. You're not chasing sex. You're running from yourself. You don't want her body. You want her to prove you're worth something. But here's the Machiavellian truth. No one will give you worth. You must seize it. You must forget. And you can't do that if you're leaking your energy into every fantasy that passes your screen. Let me tell you a modern true thing. The most successful men in this era aren't the loud ones. They're the ones who built empires while everyone else was chasing pleasure. Because that's the cost of greatness. You must walk away from the feast everyone else is gorging on. And they'll mock you. They'll call you repressed. They'll say you're afraid of pleasure. But inside, they'll envy your control. Because deep down, even they know the man who says Nop owns himself. So here's the challenge. Not to become cold. Not to reject women or beauty or love. But to become so powerful that you don't need any of it. So full of purpose that lust becomes laughable. You want to be admired. Stop chasing. Start building. And when you look in the mirror, you'll see something you haven't seen in years. A man who belongs to himself. You've given enough. Enough time. Enough attention. Enough power. To what? To the glowing screens. To the half-naked distractions. To the ghosts of dopamine dancing behind a profile picture. And what did you get in return? A momentary thrill followed by emptiness. Relief followed by shame. A high followed by a collapse. This is not pleasure. This is not freedom. This is slavery dressed in the language of modern love. The truth is this: lust will never give you what it promises. It offers intimacy but delivers isolation. It offers confidence but leaves you with self-loathing. It offers power but drains your will to create real power. You think you're indulging in life, but you're just surviving, just escaping. And the more you escape, the smaller you become. Carl Jung said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." And right now, your roots are shallow. Because every time you refuse to confront your lust, Every time you numb instead of face it, you deny yourself the strength that lies on the other side of discomfort, that hell you avoid, that storm of urges, those twisted fantasies, that feeling of helpless craving. That is your crucible. That is your fire. And until you walk through it, you will remain soft. Lust isn't just a personal failure. It is a strategic weakness. The enemy doesn't always come at you with war. Sometimes he comes with pleasure, a warm hand, a red dress, a ping on your phone that makes your heart jump. Because if they can seduce your attention, they own your mind. And once they own your mind, you've already lost the war. This is what Machiavelli understood. In The Prince, he warned not just of obvious enemies, but of temptations that make you unfit to rule. A prince must be feared, respected, unmoved by flattery or lust, because the moment a ruler gives into his flesh, he becomes predictable, and predictability is death. Now let's talk about what happens when you do break free, when you cut off the addiction, when you sit in the hunger and refuse to be ruled by it. At first it's pain, withdrawal, rage, lone lines, because your brain is used to being fed with lust, fed with images, videos, fantasies. You've trained it to expect a fix, and now you're starving it. But wait, something strange happens in the silence. Something ancient. You begin to hear yourself again. Not the part of you that wants, but the part that knows. Your instincts sharpen. Your focus deepens. Your voice lowers. Not just in tone, but in presence. You begin to walk differently. Not as a man chasing desire, but as a man who possesses it. That shift, it's the beginning of aura. The rare, magnetic force of someone who doesn't leak, who doesn't chase, who doesn't give himself away. Women feel it. Men respect it. And the world reacts to it, because they can't manipulate it. This is the rebirth, the re-emergence of your essence. The part of you that was drowned beneath years of lust and scrolling and fake affection. And once you taste that power, you won't want to go back. Because the truth is, lust makes you tame. You think it's wild, primal, masculine. It's not. Real masculinity is discipline. It's what Marcus Aurelius had as he stood above a dying empire and chose principle over pleasure. It's what Nietzsche wrote about when he described the Bermensch, the man who creates his own values, not because he's perfect, but because he conquers himself. It's what Musashi meant when he said, step by step, walk the 1,000-mile road. You walk it by resisting the shortcuts. You walk it by mastering your hunger. And not just for women, but for everything that weakens you. Because here's the part no one tells you: lust is not about sex. It's about energy. Every time you give in, you don't just lose time or semen or attention. You lose life force. You lose presence. You lose the raw, masculine drive that was meant for conquest. Not just of women, but of reality. Your lust was meant to push you toward greatness, toward creativity, toward building, toward war if needed, but you've rerouted into screens, into swipes, into chasing shadows. And so now, you walk around half alive, eyes glazed, posture bent, voice timid, a lion pretending to be a lamb. But you know, deep down, you're not a lamb. You were made for something greater. Do you know how terrifying it is to the world when a man stops living for lust? Suddenly, he's not easy to trick, not easy to market to, not easy to bribe. He's focused, direct, sober. That's the kind of man who builds nations. That's the kind of man who walks into a room and makes everyone else question their choices. You've seen him. You've felt him. And here's the uncomfortable truth: and you were meant to be him. Not addicted, not enslaved, not needy, but sovereign. It starts by turning off the noise, by deleting the fake pleasure, by choosing silence instead of stimulation. That silence, it's brutal. It will show you all the ways you've failed, all the things you've been avoiding. It'll feel like death. But it's not death. It's rebirth. That's where your real voice lives. That's where your real hunger begins. And once you've faced that darkness, once you've wrestled your shadow, no woman, No app, no fantasy will ever own you again. Because you'll know you're not here to chase, you're here to command, to lead, to build, to stand. Lust is for fools. Not because desire is evil, but because trading your power for pleasure is a fool's deal. You're not that fool anymore. You're waking up. You're pulling your energy back, and when you do, fully, unapologetically, you become dangerous, not to women, not to society, but to the systems that counted on you staying weak. Now they should be afraid. So now we've arrived. The final reckoning. You've walked through the truth, felt the sickness of your addiction, faced the weight of your habits. And now there's only one question left. Who do you want to become? You see, most men will never even ask that, because asking it requires admitting one brutal thing, that they haven't become anything at all. They've been spectators. To their urges, to their days, to their lives. Living not with intention but reaction. You wake up, you scroll, you crave, you escape, you repeat, and deep down, you know, that pattern leads nowhere. Not to love, not to legacy, not to freedom, just more loops, more hunger, more shame. But here's the beautiful, horrifying truth: you are what you tolerate. If you tolerate weakness, you become weak. If you tolerate addiction, you become an addict. If you tolerate lust, you become its servant. Not a man, not a king, not a warrior, a servant. To the algorithm, to the marketplace, to every face and curve and whisper that passes your eyes. This is the new battlefield. Forget swords and arrows. The war is being waged in your attention, in your imagination, in your energy. And lust is the bait, because if they can keep you hungry, they can keep you distracted. And if you're distracted, you'll never build anything of worth. That's the real tragedy. Not that you gave in once. Not that you watched something you shouldn't. Not that you fell for her. But that you gave your life away in pieces, one lust at a time. You could build something. A business, a family, a movement, a name. But instead, you built nothing. Because your energy leaked. Because you couldn't say no. Because you told yourself, just one more time? And now, here you are, at the edge of that same choice. Will you continue to live under your urges? Or will you rise above them? This isn't about being pure. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being sovereign. Can you sit in discomfort without reaching for a hit? Can you walk through the world with hunger, but not be consumed by it? That's power. That's dominance, discipline. Musashi said, if you wish to control others, you must first control yourself. And lust is the hardest thing to control, because it feels like freedom. But it is the deepest form of dependence. Every man who has ever risen above the average has done so by mastering his urges, not avoiding them, not hating them, but wielding them. Think of Napoleon. He knew love. He knew pleasure. But when it came time to lead men into battle, to conquer empires, to outwit kings, lust had no place in that arena. Think of Caesar. He had Cleopatra. Yes, but what made him Caesar was not desire, it was his will. Think of Nietzsche. He warned that men had become too soft, too decadent, too drunk on pleasure to think clearly. And you see it now, everywhere. Men who've lost the ability to focus, who can't sit still, who don't choose, they just respond. Pavlov's dogs in human form, programmed by porn, poisoned by lust, pacified by fake love. And they'll call it freedom. But deep down, they know they're in chains. So what does freedom really look like? It looks like discipline. It looks like restraint. It's like saying no. Not out of fear, but out of vision. It means walking past temptation with your head held high. Not because you don't feel the pull, but because you remember who you are. You are not some boy with a fantasy. You are not some animal in heat. You are a mind, a force, and lust. Lust is a test. Every time you pass it, you grow, stronger, sharper, more dangerous. Because here's what they don't tell Jung. When you stop giving in to lust, when you really stop, you begin to glow, not spiritually, not metaphorically. You radiate presence. You walk into rooms differently. You speak with stillness. You move with intention. People can feel it. Because now you are full. Full of energy. Full of purpose. Full of fire that hasn't been wasted. You become magnetic. Not because you try, but because you are not like them. You're not desperate. You're not needing. You are choosing. That's seduction at its highest level. To have the power to take, but the wisdom to withhold. To walk away. Not because you're afraid, but because you have something more important to protecting your mission. If you don't have one, that's your first problem. Because lust will always fill the void where purpose should be. When a man has no direction, no project, no war, he will chase anything that makes him feel alive, even if it kills him slowly. But when you have a reason to wake up, when your days are built around a goal so powerful it steals your breath, lust loses its power. It becomes noise, a distraction, a game for smaller men. And that's what this is really about. This isn't just about sex. It's about becoming unbreakable, because in a world of weak men, the one who masters lust is a god among animals. So here is your final truth: lust is not the enemy. It is the fuel. But only if you choose to burn it clean. Let it push you to build. Let it drive your hunger for excellence. Let it sharpen your discipline. But never again let it own you. You are too powerful for that. You are too close to becoming something terrifyingly rare, a man who cannot be seduced, because he has already chosen himself. Now go, delete the poison, break the pattern, reclaim your energy, reclaim your time, reclaim your destiny, because lust is for fools, and you're finally ready to become something greater.